Happy New Year, everyone! My name is RoyaleRebelle, and in this video, I'm going over the first DbD Developer update of 2024. Now, the devs definitely have a lot of things planned with this update, so let's dive right in. First off is the developers plan to stop 3 gens. For those of you who aren't aware, this is in regard to killers who use a strat specifically to defend 3 generators so that survivors don't have the ability to complete 5 generators and end the match. Now, the main issue with this strat is that it just creates these very prolonged matches and is a no-win scenario for survivors. Like, basically, you know, it's that killers are staying within a radius of 3 generators. Like, they're not taking chase outside of that radius. They're not hooking survivors unless they're within that radius. Like, they are only staying by 3 generators, and that's it. It's really boring. It's really prolonged. Like, I think the longest match I've had with that was like 45 minutes because, like, Ghostface would not look around the map for the other survivors. Now, the changes that the developers have proposed to kind of like combat this, they're good and bad. So for killers, they're limiting the number of times that a generator can regress. Now, this is both through kicking a generator or like perks that cause gen regression. The killers will be able to see if a generator has the ability to be regressed further, so they know if they can kick it or if they need to like take chase elsewhere. And the devs are limiting these to 8 events per generator. So realistically, like in your average match, like a killer is not getting a gen to regress 8 times. But, like, if you are doing a 3-gen, like, this is a very, like, achievable number. And then on top of this, killers kicking a generator does double damage. It used to be 2.5% of charges, and now it's going to be 5%. For survivors, they're removing the ability to gen tap or briefly work on a generator to stop it from regressing. In order to get a generator to stop regressing, survivors will have to repair 5% of the generator's charges in order to like, kind of take. Now, I know this is going to come off sounding biased, but, like, if the goal is to stop 3-gen scenarios, which this is what the devs have stated, taking away gen taps defeats the whole purpose. Because if a killer knows that survivors are working on, like, a generator within their 3-gen web, like, there is nothing to stop them from hovering that generator and preventing survivors from getting that 5% of a charge done. And I think what we'll see a lot in the PTB for this update is, one, because the PTB gameplay tends to be more extreme just in general, but also because killers are going to be like more aware of this change, and they're going to be looking to see how much they can capitalize on putting pressure on specific generators. So I think adding charges was a really good idea for killers because, again, you know, in an average match, you're not going to get a killer who gets a gen to regress more than 8 times unless they are specifically guarding certain generators. But I think, like most things that DbD does, they take it a step too far by getting rid of the gen tapping. Because I really think you only get that regression event if you include the gen tapping, because that's what kind of happens a lot in a 3-gen scenario, is that you have the killer patrolling in a very tight radius. So, like, by the time, like, you know, they patrol back and they see, like, the generator's no longer regressing, like, I don't think 5% of charges is that much time. I think if they want to keep both of these changes, they'll probably have to limit the number of events even further, but we'll see what happens after the PTB. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. So next is probably what I think is either the best or the second best part of this update, and it's including a FOV Slider for killers. So killers will no longer have to rely on perks as an accessibility feature in Dead by Daylight. This does mean there are going to be changes made to Shadowborn and Monitor and Abuse. For now, they're just taking away the field of view part of it, so Shadowborn's going to kind of be taken out of commission until they figure out what they want to do with it. But killers will be able to change their field of view from 87 degrees, which is the default, all the way up to 103 degrees, which is the current maximum with perks. Now, I'm really happy to see accessibility being more, like, serious in the game, and I really hope we keep seeing changes like this to the game, because I know there are still ways that we can improve on accessibility in the game. For example, like, a lot of people take issue with how visually, like, the clown's ability affects gameplay. Like, I think that's something that would be really nice to see tweaked, just like the visuals of it, and things like that. Onryo is getting some small tweaks, so they're trying to find a middle ground between what she was before her last update and then her current update. So the tweaks that they've come up with is that There's no more mass condemning when she teleports. Only survivors within 16 meters of a power TV will get stacks of condemned, and then they've reworked the curse tape so they no longer protect survivors from gaining condemned, but they also no longer break when a survivor is hit. And then instead of being able to be deposited in any TV on the map, it's the TV furthest from the one they were picked up. Now, I really liked what they did with the curse tapes. Like, I liked how it could protect you from gaining condemned, and I liked that it was balanced with having that risk of, like, if Onryo tastes you, you got double stacks of condemned. So I'm kind of disappointed to see that go away, because I really thought that was a balanced, part of her update. But I do think that this reads like the middle ground the developers were hoping for. So we'll see how that goes. Now, maybe the best part of the update, but at least Billy fans, you guys get to rejoice. He is getting a long-awaited buff. Overheating is no longer a thing for Hillbilly. They are now changing his mechanic to overdrive, so you don't stall out because you hold the chainsaw too long. You actually start to go faster. So overdrive has these effects that last for 20 seconds. The chainsaw charge speed increases by 5%. Chainsaw movement is increased to 13 meters per second. I think before that was 10 meters per second. And the chainsaw sprint cooldowns are reduced by 10%. Along with this, he's also getting some general improvements to his kit. So they're reducing his chainsaw collision. The camera sensitivity is no longer tied to like controller sensitivity. And they've increased his chainsaw sprint by 10%. So hopefully this brings back the dying Hillbilly race to DbD. I know I get to see some more Hillbilly mains, because he does look like a really fun character to play with, but he's just gotten next to no love in this game. Now, there are a handful of perks that are getting updates. This includes Save the Best for Last, aka Stabiffle, Grim Embrace, Quick Gambit, and Ruin. As I mentioned earlier, Shadowborn and Monitor Bees are also technically getting updates, but that's tied to the field of view aspect, so there's not really any changes coming to those. Stabiffle is getting nerfed, so tokens are going from a 5% stackable cooldown to 4%, and then the Obsession losing a health state by any means will cost the killer 2 tokens. Previously, it was 1 token for a basic attack. Now, this one I think I'm gonna have to see in gameplay before I know how to feel about it. Like, as a vanilla nerf, like, yeah, I could see people taking issue with it, but there are so many perks in the game that allow you to change who the Obsession is. Like, my current spirit build is like a Rancor build with Game of Foot, so like, my Obsession is based on who I chase. So, like, this either is going to be, like, not affect me at all, or I'm going to have to completely rethink my Rancor build. So we'll have to see. Like, it's the losing the health state by any means is what, like, has me curious, because, there's things like For the People, there's, I forget the Nicolas Cage perk where you can put yourself into the dying state. Like, so there are, like, ways outside of, like, the killer, necessarily attacking a survivor where a survivor can lose a health state that, like, I'm curious to see, like, how that comes into play. Grim Embrace is getting a buff to now include a secondary effect that will block all generators for 12 seconds after they move 16 meters away from a hook survivor. It still has its main con of, like, once you hook each survivor once, it locks all the gens. But they wanted to get more value out of this perk for players. I think locking all the generators, like, I know it's only 12 seconds, but, like, locking all the generators because you hooked one survivor, like, that's crazy. If I were to make a change to this, like, if I were to buff this, I would make it, like, the 3 closest gens. Like, you get half the map. You can have half the map. You don't get the whole map, but we'll see. We'll see if this gets more people to play it, because that's kind of seems to be the theme with this and the next perk. So Quick Gambit is getting, I don't want to call it a buff, but it is getting changed. If you guys don't know, this is a Vittorio perk that, like, I think it has some good potential, but it is so underutilized because of the nature of solo queue. So how it basically worked before is that you got, I believe it was an 8% boost to repair, or you gave an 8% boost to repair if you were taking chase by killer within 24 meters of the generator. Now, why this doesn't work is because generally in solo queue, 24 meters is within the terror radius of a killer, and so in solo queue, you hear the killer's terror radius, you move away from that generator to go work on one that's not likely to receive pressure. Now, what they've done is they've increased the range from 24 meters to 36 meters. So you're not necessarily going to be in a killer's terror radius in order to receive this benefit. But then they change it so that instead of that max 8% boost to repairs, it's only 5%. Now, for context, Prove Thyself at base gives you 6%. So, like, this doesn't even reach the same level as Prove Thyself. So, like, I understand the logic. I just don't agree with the application because, like, the developers are trying to kind of get ahead of, like, not letting this perk be too powerful. But so while they tackle the issue of why players don't use it because you only got value when you were within the killer's terror radius, they basically took away the incentive. Like, 5%, that's nothing. I mean, it might be able to stack, but it's this thing where you got to think about the game from, like, a solo queue perspective, you know? So, like, yeah, somebody might potentially have Prove Thyself, but Prove Thyself is not nearly as popular as it used to be. So, like, I know they want to keep it overpowered, or from being overpowered, because you don't want, you know, teammates using Prove Thyself and toolboxes, and then you've got somebody running Quick Gambit, like, but that's just too much coordination to kind of, like, base how the perk functions around. Like, I really think they should have just increased the range and left the boost alone. I don't think they're going to encourage anybody to use this perk with this change. I think it's still going to be just as popular as it was before, which is basically not at all. And then finally, with in terms of perks, Ruin is just removing the condition that it deactivates when someone dies. And I'll be honest with you guys, I didn't even know that was a thing. I will be 100% honest. Like, I know I make these videos and I know I, like, cover content on, like, what the developers update, but, like, honestly, it's either Ruin gets cleansed so quickly that, like, it doesn't have a chance to, like, be snuffed out because someone dies, or, like, if it does get to the point where players are dying and Ruin is still in play, either Ruin wasn't doing what the killer needed it to do, so it was, you know, it was a non-objection, or, I'm sorry, I don't know what that phrase was, but it just, like, it either, like, wasn't helping the killer, or the killer was so powerful enough that, like, the match is over anyways. So that's why I didn't really feel like I noticed that condition of it, and the developers kind of agree, like, the condition was moot, so they're just removing it. So I don't think anyone's gonna miss that condition. Now, the last part of the developer update, normally this would be my favorite part of a developer update, but it just kind of feels a little meh and unnecessary, and that's that Ormond is getting a layout update. Like I said, I love seeing this. Like, I loved seeing the Strode map get reworked. I loved seeing the Red Forest get reworked. I love the update of the visuals. And they shared some videos in their developer update of what they plan to do. And while, like, I'm not necessarily mad, I guess I'm just kind of disappointed that we're not getting, like, an overhaul like we did with Strode and with Red Forest on a map that really deserved it. So what they plan to do basically is add more clutter to the front and the back of the cabin, of the resort, or whatever you want to call it, so that there's no more dead zones. So, like, in the front where there was that rock wall where, like, if you basically came out of the resort, you were kind of in a dead zone until you could make it to the tiles in the back. So they're, like, adding picnic tables, and they're trying to make it more interesting and improve gameplay there. I don't really have an opinion at this point in time. Like, it's going to be one of those things that I need to see it in the PTB to know how to feel about it. But those are most of the updates that they announced this week. I'll be leaving a link to the update in the description below if anyone wants to read it for themselves. But what do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more of my content, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel so I can bring you more Dead by Daylight content. And if you want to check out my Twitch streams, don't forget to follow me there so you can be notified of when I go live.